Hello, and happy, wonderful Wednesday, everybody. I'm so excited that you are joining me today. We are having a really important conversation, and I am so excited because I am joined by two individuals who are going to they're going to chime in, and we're going to get into a much needed conversations about renters' rights. And so here's a situation where renters are being punished by landlords because of the time that they serve. So they've been incarcerated, or maybe they have a criminal record, a not so clean past. This is a bill that's being introduced in New York. And for many of you who have been following me, you already know that I'm a landlord and tenant expert, the abundantly blessed landlord and tenant expert. Let me put that in there. And I usually am live on Mondays at 7:30 p.m., but I thought it would be fitting to have this conversation as this bill, this discussion was just uh, presented to me on just yesterday. And so I am excited to share information today, but let me just also give this disclaimer that the information that we share today is not legal advice. Okay. I want you all to know and understand that we are not attorneys. And if you have legal questions, you will definitely have to consult or speak to or with a reputable landlord and tenant attorney who could best advise you on rights, whether it's for landlords and or tenants. Okay, and so for those of you who are watching the replay, thank you so much. I am currently live on Facebook, I'm live on YouTube, and I am live on LinkedIn. All right. If you have questions, comments, remarks, or observations, please give us your feedback. Let us know what your thoughts. What do you think should be the outcome of the discussion on today? Throw it in the comment section. We will definitely respond to it. So, without further ado, I'm going to bring to the screen now my two special guests, Miss Kimberly Pope and Mr. Adam Butler.
Hi, everybody, dog.
Hello. Thank
Hello.
you for having me.
Hey, Kim. Hey, Adam. Listen, I'm excited to have you two chime in on this much needed discussion and conversation on today. We know that there is a bill that's being proposed in New York City regarding this very matter. Let me see, make sure I adjust all my volumes here. So we know that there's a bill that's currently introduced in New York, and it's definitely going to impact a lot of people, whether they're landlords or whether they're tenants. And so the conversation that we're having today, I know that a lot of people will likely have some questions. People will have comments regarding this. Now, for many jurisdictions, I do know that the laws are not the same. Although this bill is being proposed or is introduced in New York City, um, this law is currently in place in areas and jurisdictions that are strongly pro tenant, such as Washington, D.C. I believe Seattle, Washington is also pro tenant as well. But let's have a conversation about this bill. I want to know your feedback. I want to know your input. And so when I watched a YouTube clip, and I thought it was incredibly intriguing that they're having these conversations to determine how a landlord can operate their business. And so I guess my first question I do want to ask is, are you aware of it? Have you seen the video? What knowledge do you have about this bill that's being proposed? Let me start with you first, Adam.
Yes, I watched the video, and my take of it is like it could be go for and against either way. But the thing is, I think, just speaking from personal experience, when you're dealing with a background check, the information, the people who are looking at the information, they're not qualified legal people, like legal experts. So they might not understand when it says something like it might say the charges was quashed or that the sentence was overturned, or you've been arrested but you haven't been convicted. All they're just saying is how many arrests a person may have, and not necessarily he could be arrested about 20 times but not convicted. So do that make you a criminal, or just make you someone that's been arrested in multiple times? So and then it's and then you also got to deal with the length of time of these incidents. If these incidents were 10 to 15 years ago, no one's the same. We all change. It's 4 seasons in a year, so that means during a person is allowed to be able to change their ways, their thinking, and their mindset. And they're always put together. We're supposed to be the land of opportunity, so it's always for the person supposed to be allowed to have a chance, or give them an opportunity. And you just can't base it off of a mistake that he made 10, 15, 20 years ago, as some of the people in New York are saying.
That's good. I like that. Let me hear from Kim. Let me bring Kim to the stage.
Hey, yes, I feel like I don't think it's a good idea for them. I feel like it's just discrimination, and it's like too much into people's like personal lives because you never know who you may be living next door to, and it's like that's really none of our business, really, to be honest. Um, and I feel like people are being punished for things that may have happened, like he said, years ago, and it's not fair. I've been in that situation. Um, I've had my background hold me back from certain apartments and jobs and things of that nature, and I don't think it's fair.
All right. Okay. So I see that some comments have come in. Let us take a look at the comments here. All right. People are chiming in. Hello. Hello. I see you tuned in on the YouTube channel. All right. Hello, Janice. Thank you so much for tuning in. All right. Here's a question that we have, guys. And the question is, why do you think they haven't made it illegal to conduct background checks on applicants? And that's a great question. Do any of you want to take a stab at this before I comment?
Um,
Let me repeat the question. Why do you think they haven't made it illegal to conduct background checks on applicant? Adam, you want to address this?
I think one of the reasons, I think that a background check, the purpose of a background check when you dealing with not just um housing or employment, it a background check is supposed to show a person how a person character is. So you're basing someone on their character, whether it's good character or bad character, whether they're a good tenant or a good job applicant. And we have to understand that it's just nothing really personal in that. It's just that yes, we know people make mistakes, and yes, people should be allowed to have opportunity to grow from the mistakes. But at the same token, we got to understand that it's not just about criminal background; it's also credit, because credit is just a history of you paying your bills on time, and that's also going to in character and financial responsibility. There's a lot of things that these background checks that they're doing for that purpose, because they want to know what type of person you are, because they don't know you, and you can pretend to be whoever you want to be when you're in front of these people and write all information down, and it might not match up.
I like that. I like that. Let me hear from Kim. Kim, let me pull the question back up. Hello, Jonathan Mickles. Thank you so much for tuning in. You said this is a great topic. You're interested in hearing perspective. Thank you so much. So here's a question, Kim. Let me pull it back up. I want you to take a stab at this. Give me your feedback. Here's our question in the comment section. Why do you think they haven't made it illegal to conduct background checks on an applicant?
Well, I think they haven't made it illegal yet because due to certain restrictions, like there are certain things that you absolutely have to know about a person. And so if you make those certain aspects illegal, it's like you could be renting to anybody or you could be giving anybody a job. We have to know about something about your history in order to, be able to move forward with the process. You feel what I'm saying? I don't think everything should be private. We have to know some things about you before we offer you something. That's just life itself. You're not just going go let anybody drive your car or whatever the case may be. You have to know a tiny bit of information about this person. So that's why I feel like they haven't made it illegal yet. But I think if we, keep protesting, they might make it illegal.
All right. So you think it is important?
I do think it's important to
Okay.
a certain degree.
Okay. All right.
Mhm.
I see a question here in the chat from Janiqua Hutchison. Here's a question. Would it make sense to have a limit on how far back the landlord can go on the background checks? Would it make sense to have a limit? So, should a landlord only go back a year or 3 years or 5 years or 7 years? Would it make sense to have a limit on how far back the landlord can go on the background checks? Adam, I'm coming to you first on this one here.
Um, yeah, I would agree with like just like on a permit application, they only supposed to be allowed, quote unquote, to go back 7 years, but we do know that that's not the case all the time. But when you think about it, we never know. Like sometimes things just happen. It's not just about or a person refusing to pay rent, or the person with a things happen. Things happen. Lost a job. Someone might got sick. A death in family. Things. Calamities that we have no control over, and that, in a sense, that happened within the last 10 or 15 years. Why should someone be punished for that if they fought their way back? They kept steady employment, even though going through all that, they kept steady employment. Things happen, we see it all the time. They might even people might get priced out of their rent. So now you pricing me out my rent. I might not want to. I might don't want to leave. I ain't got nowhere to go. Even if you, I'm not saying that I would. That's the case. But sometimes that happens. You get priced out your rent. So now you ain't got nowhere to go. So you ain't going on the street. Especially if you, a family with, a single mother family, or a family in general, and you don't have nobody, no support system, and no one want we all hear the horror stories about the shelters, and some people just end up on the street. And we got to always realize that the people that's homeless and unhoused, they're not on the street because by choice. You know what I'm saying? Just some things happen that they haven't been able to rebound from, and the resources that's available to them is not the best resources, the best options rather.
Okay. All right. Coming to you, Kim. Let me get your feedback. Would it make sense to have a limit on how far back the landlord can go on the background checks?
It does make sense to put limits on it because, I mean, how long does a person have to suffer for past mistakes? We all can change and move forward and become better people. You don't have to keep on being punished for the same crime over and over again. Not even necessarily a crime. Maybe you didn't pay your rent like he was saying. But I think 5 years should be the max.
Okay. Now, there are limits on how far back landlords can go, just depending on the jurisdiction. All right. So let me go to another question here in the comments section. I see a question. Here's a comment from Janice. She says, I think that background checks should not be done because I think that living somewhere is very personal. And I can appreciate this perspective. What's your take on this? I see the wheels turning, Adam. Come on, talk to me.
Right now, in the brown and black community, we're dealing with children and women coming up missing. In the black and brown community is the only area where they're not alerting the people in the neighborhood that there are sex offenders and predators in the neighborhood. You go anywhere else, they're knocking on doors. They have a picture of the person. They passing out flyers. So when you think of these things, where you do want to know who you're next to. Um, that's something that that should be obvious, especially as a parent, as a woman, even as a man, because sometimes they kidnap men too, but the most part is women. And you want to know, you know what I'm saying? Like we dealing with, and in the right now with all the creeps that's running around here, there's no way in the world you're going, me personally, and I got daughters. You know what I'm saying? I'm not even going to tell you how I feel about my daughters. My wife, that's another, another topic of discussion. But my daughters, I was ready to do something to people that they even look at them wrong. So I know that you want to, you know what I'm saying? And they fully cover Muslims. So it's like, I don't even know. It has to be some type of safeguard, especially when the majority in the brown and black community is women and they're living alone. Like y'all really have to be serious about that aspect of it because if that's a fact that where the brown and black community, there being the women and the children are being snatched up and no one's finding them. No
Uh,
one's finding them.
I know that Kim, she has this look on her face. She's waiting to chime in. Kim, let me hear your take on this. Do you think that the background check should not be done because where a person live is personal, is very personal? What's your take on this?
Um, the unit that you live in is very personal. However, you don't live there alone. So there I think there should be certain, you know, barriers or background checks somewhere down the line to guarantee not even only for the neighbors, but how about for the landlord? What if you just moved from somewhere, you didn't pay a lick of rent, and now how am I supposed to know that? And then I rent to you, you do the same thing to me. It takes me so long to get you out of my unit. Now I'm losing so much money because I didn't do a background check because we think it's very personal. And also, he's saying like, sex offenders could live next door to you or whatnot. Um, I feel like, how will we know? How will we know? What if they haven't been convicted of being a sex offender and they still do it? The only time that we are aware is if they've been convicted and they have a record and they have to go on the sex offender registry. That's the only way we would know. But we don't know if they haven't been convicted or, anything of that nature. Um, so it's like, what are we to do with all the pedophiles and the child molesters? Are we to just go put them in one area and just have them housed by themselves? Like, then that's going to lead to them becoming worse, child molesters. They're coming up with different ways to get around the system, so I don't think that's fair either. So, with that one, it's kind of a tug of war. I don't think that it should be not be done only because living somewhere is very personal. I don't agree with that statement.
All right, I like that. Let me bring Adam back up. All right, so I like that. And so here's the thing. I think that as we continue on this conversation, that a lot more things are going to come out. Here's a question by Jonathan here. All right, Jonathan is asking, is there a rubric that landlords can use to better understand how to better qualify tenants? Is there a rubric that landlords can use to better qualify, to better understand how to better qualify tenants? I'm sorry. Adam, did you want to take a stab at that? Like, is there so what Jonathan is asking, he's asking like, what are the criteria? Is are we using, or could we use income stability and employment, right? Could it be income to rent ratio, rental history? Like, he's asking a specific question because I think that for the weightiness of this discussion today, what can landlords do to better understand? Like, if we take if we consider this, if we take this bill that's being proposed in New York, we already know that in Seattle, Washington, it's in existence. In Washington, D.C., it's already in existence. But for other areas, for other landlords who are now faced with, maybe they didn't have these laws in place and now they're threatened to be forced to adhere to these laws, right? What are some things that landlords can use?
Um,
What can they do to measure the quality of tenants that are going to be essentially renting those properties?
I mean, that's a great question. Only thing I could think of, a friend of mine, she's like she does all that, like a background. She does all the background checks. She goes out and meets the tenant, the potential tenant, screen them, just screen them, and ask them to be upfront and honest as possible. But it's so many, like I said, you can perpetuate an image on paper as well as you can perpetuate an image in person. Me personally, as a landlord, if I was a landlord, I would take referrals like from people that I already who's vouching for these people, as well as asking them to come with some references or learn or deal with community organizations that's helping people that's with whether it's low income, mid income, that's helping people get better housing. Have these conversations with these housing organizations, have these conversations with community organizations where though you can screen, they can help you figure out a way to screen potential tenants and just go into the neighborhoods, meet the people because sometimes the tenant never meets the landlord. It's always the realtor, the real estate agent or the property manager that they're renting to. They never actually meet the person that they're renting to that they even receiving money from. So maybe some way it's a way where it's like an open house where those renters, potential renters, and potential landlord can meet on a regular basis when units come open, and maybe that'll help. You know what I'm saying? Because we have to make that process a personal process. Reason why it's so much uproar about it because it's an impersonal process, especially when you're dealing with the background check, because you don't know how accurate that information is, and yes, we also know that TransUnion, um, Equifax, and Experience, they've been sued for having incorrect information on people's credit report. So this is the thing, but we have to be learning. You have to learn these things and have to actually use the resources too.
All right, so Kim, I'm coming to you. I want you to chime in on this. What's your feedback? Talk to me.
Um, I don't know what more can a landlord request from a tenant. Is already like y'all already have so many qualifications that y'all require to even just apply. I mean, what more can we give them? I mean, y'all want to know how everything that we did since we were a child? Like, I don't know what I don't. I really couldn't think of something a rubric. I don't know. I couldn't think of anything more than what we already do.
Okay, so let me just throw this in here. So let's just say that the bill passes and the landlords in New York City are now required to adhere to this new mandate. They cannot prevent someone from moving into their rental property because of their criminal past. They could, for instance, look at income. Does the applicant have the ability um, to pay the rent? Right. So, for instance, they can look at employment. They can look at whatever income they have to make sure that they income qualify. Now, let me just also say that income is a protected class. And so if the applicant or the prospective tenant does have some sort of housing subsidy tied to them, they're in some sort of housing program, then income is a protected class. But that's a way to qualify or to determine whether or not that person will be a good fit. They could A landlord could also consider the rental history, right? Have Do they have a history of paying their rent? So I think with that, the questions I would ask is, do they have the capacity to pay? Do they have the intent to pay? And so when we could also consider those things. And so those are some other measures that we could use to better qualify tenants. So Jonathan, thank you so much for that question. Thank you for tuning in. Hey, Jennifer. All right, so let's go to another question here. Look like Tierra says that it's a lack of privacy and protection. Hello, Dee Dee Evans. I see you on the Facebook page. You said, I think people do need to know who's living around them. And I think that, on one hand, it is important, but let me just also say this before we do have a lot of comments and questions coming in here. But let me just get in on this conversation because I believe that these conversations are so needed, right? So I wanted to do this panel discussion because I want people to hear the collaborated perspectives from not just myself but you all as well, because I can take a stand as a housing professional, as a housing provider, but I also, at the end of the day, I am human. And one of the things that I tell landlords that I'm working with, that I'm speaking with, whether I'm coaching, consulting, managing their property, or what have you, I always tell them to run their business like a business. And if they run it like a business, it's going to pay them like a business. If they treat it like a hobby, it's going to pay them like a hobby. And in doing so, you cannot have, as a landlord, you cannot run your business off of emotions. And I know that sometimes smaller landlords are the ones who suffer the most because of a lack of knowledge. And so that's why it's important for us to have this conversation today. But let me go to more of the comments that are coming in here. Janice says, I don't think it's fair because there is a law in place for sexual offenders in certain places that allow them to live among others, but only by certain restrictions. So why not the same for others? And I think that is a very good question. Adam, let me have you to respond to this. Then I'm gonna come back to Kim.
All right, this might be about to be real unpopular, but I'm not just speaking from some soapbox. I'm speaking from experience. And when I say this, that you never really understand the consequences of your action until it affects you later. And as a man, coming up in the urban area and growing up in one of the roughest neighborhoods in Philadelphia, you see a lot. You become desensitized. And with that being said, like as an adult, I don't raise two sons that's in college, that graduated college, and they're doing well. And I got a son now who's about to graduate tomorrow and going to college. I'm a college graduate. I couldn't have been able to do none of that or push this if I didn't get this degree. You can't tell your kids to do something and then they're not doing it. And with that being said, we can't complain about crime when we know we have family members and people that we know who's the problem in our neighborhood. So when you saying it should be in place, certain things should be in place, or certain things shouldn't be in place, it's not. There's no mass shooter that's white that's coming into our neighborhood shooting them. These people are holding, some of us in certain areas holding the hostage where though we don't come outside for a certain time of the day, or go, make sure our kids don't even allow our kids outside because it's not safe to be outside. These are the things that would make us as parents grind so hard to try to change the environment we're raising our children in. So we can't, so we have to hold some type of accountability for ourselves. So if you got bad credit, you need to fix it because they're going to judge you on that. You know what I'm saying? If you, and it is what it is, you can't get around that. Like if you don't have a history of paying your bills on time, you gonna be like they said in the video, gonna be stuck in a certain neighborhood, which is not fair at all. But it's the reality because at some point in time, as adults, and I'm talking for someone I'm 47 years old. I've never even thought I lived to be this age. So I'm telling you that as an adult, we have to take some type of responsibility and accountability, not for the outside, but for ourselves and our family. You know what I'm saying? And we can't tell our children to go to college. We can, but it look even better when you have a degree. We can't tell our kids we make sure you got a bank account and we don't have one. We paying through everything through Cash App and Shine. Like these things, of course, they wasn't taught unless we had family members that taught us. But at the same token, we can't complain about certain things when a lot of things it had to be we have to be realistic. Like some things ain't the best situation, but we got to create solutions for ourselves and then our community because
I
the
like
community is huge. And that's it. I'm gonna say with that. because it's like we know what's holding us back. They've been doing it for centuries. Financial literacy, but we gotta realize our great grandparents, my great grandparents, your great grandparents, they did more with less. So what is our excuse? They
Wow.
were homeowners and bank, and they understood to buy life insurance. They understood all these things, these financial instruments, and with less education. So and now we live in an area, we live in an age where if the information is widespread, we can get at the our fingertips on social media. Everything is not a scam. Do your own research.
That's good. I like that. We have another question that came in. Kim, did you want to respond to that? If not, I'm going to bring up another question. I see a question here from Kayla. Did you want to chime in on that, Kim, before I move to the next question?
No, I think he knocked it right out the park.
All right. There's a question here from Kayla. How do you feel? How do you all feel about them doing this in New York specifically, especially with the U.S. history of over policing those in the Black community, and with U.S. police forces training with the IDF? And I think that you've already touched on this a bit, Adam. And so, like I said, in some jurisdictions, these laws are already in place. So in Washington, D.C., many of us who are housing providers and landlords, we have, or many who have rental business properties or businesses in the District of Columbia, you already know that it's tenant friendly. There are a lot of laws in place. And since the pandemic, it has definitely made it worse. So then the question is, uh, should New York be doing it? Should other states be doing it? Um, I think it is important for more laws to be in place, but I think that the laws should be fair. But Kim, do you have a comment or remark on this question here?
No, I don't.
All right, so Adam, you've already touched on that one. So let's go to the next one here. The Viper 930X tuned in from the YouTube channel. Thank you so much. How would you feel if you had a home and they wanted to move in with you? Would you want to know the person passed or not? And I love that. I love this perspective because think of it like this. If a person is coming into your community, they're coming into your home. Do you want to know who they are? Do you just freely invite anybody in and not know who they are? I love this question. I love this perspective. Kim, I want you to address this one because Adam has already given his dissertation and already defended it.
Of course, I would want to know if they were moving like in my house. However, like some, in my opinion, and this is my opinion, in my opinion, some things are better left unknown. It's like if you do know that a person lived next door to you, what can you do about it? What what can you do about it? So it's like nowadays, America don't know how to mind their business. Everything is not everybody's business. That's how I feel personally. Of course, I would want to know if like a murderer is living right next door to me, but how am I supposed to know? How can I know? And then when I find that information out, what am I to do with it? Do I contact their parole officer? Or I mean, everybody deserves a place to live, in my opinion. It doesn't matter if everybody deserves a second chance, and that's just my stance on it. That's how I feel. I just don't want to know.
Okay, I like that. Here is another question. Nita Hutchison on the Facebook page said, here's a question. Maybe due to the level of the crime, wouldn't you want to know if you live next to a former child predator or burglar? Good question. All right, let me go to the next one. Tierra says it would make sense. But Tierra also suggests that maybe landlords should only go back. So I think her comment goes back to the question, how many years should a landlord look at? And so Tierra is saying maybe 7 years. Dee Dee says, yes, I do think it should be a limit. All right. Jennifer also said go back 7 years because you would know more about that tenant and how they take care of the property. I do like that. So Jonathan has a question here. I think 24 months with no convictions is a good rule of thumb. What do you all think?
I mean, that's what they actually use when they, that's one of the, even though they supposed to say they don't use your criminal history. That's one of the questions they ask you. It's real. It's put in real slotty. Have you been arrested in the last 12 months? That's one of the questions on every application. People might don't even pay attention to it because, of course, if you're not committing crime, you're not even thinking it. It's not even a thought. But it's not really about crime or being someone being convicted. It's when you're dealing with the background check, and I'm gonna say it again, it's really about dealing with a person's character. Because a person may be convicted of a heinous crime, but learned some things while he was inside to change his mindset and become a person of upstanding character. And then now you're not dealing with the person who he used to be, you're dealing with the person who he is now, which is a big difference.
I like that. Um, Tiara has a comment. She said, it's bigger than this. There needs to be other opportunities to those returning to the outside. There should be limits, yes, but not total denial. Everyone should be able to accept and have change in their lives. I think she might have meant to be accepted. I definitely do like that comment. All right. And those who cannot accept someone's change shouldn't be available for given opportunity. I do like that as well. All right, here's Jonathan's question. I've heard the term second chance. Is that just for credit or also for criminal history?
Uh,
I think it's for both. It should be for
yeah, I mean,
both.
it could be for both. I'm sorry, go ahead, Ken. I apologize.
Yeah, I think it definitely should be for criminal history. As far as credit, you might have to take, might have to take that up with your bank. But I think it's definitely a second chance for criminal history.
And I agree with that, but you gotta realize, like most people that have extensive criminal history, they don't have any credit, so it really can't apply to a second chance for credit because they don't have any credit. And and no credit is like just as bad as having bad credit.
That's true.
And so you have to really understand that part when it comes to the black and brown people in the black and brown community. That's a we have it's documented, it's well known that it's just the majority of us have bad credit. So it's like if you have bad credit, you know what I'm saying? Like they're looking at you like you're not trustworthy. So it's nothing personal. Once again, it's just that credit can be fixed. It might take a little bit of time, but it can be fixed, and you can get the right credit score. And then there are also now things in place now, the apps that you can use to, if you've been having positive rent history, that you can apply that you can have that on your credit report. There's a lot of things that you can do with, just like I said, you just have to do your research. Everything just dealing with credit is not a scam, and you just have to do your due diligence. And it's also about it's patience because yeah, we know if I'm living in an area where it's a lot going on, I want to get out of my family out of here, ASAP Rocky. But if I have to grind, save, and do the things necessary and use all the resources I can to make sure that I can get out, even if it don't happen within a year or maybe two, because we gotta think it out the mindset too. Renting to home ownership, especially in the brown black community. Like you know what I'm saying? Like that was something that was enforced in our what I'm saying, in our family members from before us had come out of slavery. They understood the importance of owning land. They understood the importance of being homeowners. You know what I'm saying? Of course, becoming a homeowner starts with good credit. We have to get the credit right. We have to get the savings right, and it can happen. And in DC, there's opportunities for the black and brown more than anywhere else. That's why so many people coming here. Y'all see, and you saying it, and that's why so many people coming to DC, and that's what it is. Like we have to really just look at it from another aspect. It's just not about criminals because, like I said, most criminals don't have no credit, and they're not even thinking about building credit because they're not living for 10 years. They're living for that day.
That's good. I do like that. I have a comment here from Cassandra. Kim, did you want to chime in before I go to the next comment here? We have a lot of comments and questions. I want to try to get through them really quickly here.
No, I'm fine.
So Cassandra says, if the goal is to have people with criminal backgrounds added back into society, why keep them out? And that is a good point. Janiqua said she think that 5 years is good. I like that. Dee Dee said there should be laws too for landlords to break the lease if they find out later after renting to someone that they have a charge. Well, so here's the thing with that, Dee Dee. If the laws are in place that prohibits landlords from conducting a background check, or if the law says you cannot solely deny a tenant because of their background, then that would still protect them if they move in and later the landlord finds out that they do have an extensive criminal record. When they're in, they're in, if that is the law. And so if they're covered on the front end, the landlord will not be able to or should not be able to come back on the back end and penalize the tenant if they were accepted. Because think of it like this. Let's say you have someone that you know who's really close to you. They did their time, they served, they came out, they're living in their home. Then all of a sudden, their landlord kicked them out because of the crime that they did time for, time served, right? And so I just don't think that a law that prohibits landlords from denying applicants due to criminal could allow that same landlord to penalize them on the back end. But I do appreciate that perspective. So Cassandra says, so you do a background check on a new person. What about the ones that are already living there that have dodged the legal system? That's a good question. But see, here's the thing. Um, and I don't know that there are too many places that are doing this unless they are in some sort of housing program, and maybe they're a small um, acceptable situations. But I don't see why you would have to do a criminal background check for somebody that's currently living in it. Now, let me say this. I do know that things happen. So one of the things that I do as a housing professional, I've been in this industry for more than 2 decades. And so if I come into acknowledgement or I'm aware that there is some criminal behavior or some illegal activity going on at a rental property, one of the things that I'm inclined to do is to see the police reports, speaking with law enforcement to see, has there been a history of crime, calls going to this address, and to find out what it is? So I don't necessarily have to do a background check to see what the activity is, right? Because with that, and if it violates the lease, then now I can enforce the lease and take the tenant to court. So, for instance, if the lease says that you cannot commit illegal activity or illegal crime while you are living in the property, right? So whether it's them, somebody that's visiting, their mama, their baby mama, their baby father, boo boo, Shaniqua, whatever, whoever visits that property, if they are creating a situation, because here's the thing, I wouldn't even just limit it to just that tenant. It would be anybody that's conducting any type of illegal activity at the property. So I don't even think that that would be a good idea to run a background check for tenants who are already there. Just do your research, contact the police department, find out if there is a history of illegal activities going on, and then act off of that. All right, Jonathan has a question. Also, what is the liability of the landlord for not having more stringent background checks? Higher insurance fees, property reputation issues, etc. Great question, Jonathan. Thank you so much. Repeat the question. I'm going to have you to chime in. Adam, what is the liability of the landlord? Think about this. Are landlords liable for not having more stringent background checks?
Um, I was trying to think of like in the video that we watched, the gentleman who said he worked for housing in Milwaukee, but he didn't do no research about Allentown. And I'm from Pennsylvania, and I know a lot about Allentown, so I can understand like a lot of people from out of town go to Allentown to sell drugs. So you have a drug conviction, and this is already known, like you said, the property reputation issue. And this is already a city that's an area that's known for out of towners to come and sell drugs. And here it is, you got a drug conviction. But he didn't do no research about Allentown, and if he know anything about Burke County, he wouldn't have went there. Um, I guess but when it comes to the liability issues with that, I think landlords really have to do, like I said, they have to really me. I would incorporate and get and be on a first name basis with a lot of the community development centers in the area where your property is at. So that way you have a system in place where they can work with them to screen potential tenants for you. That might help you a lot because at the same token, you'll know that there some is there be whether it's not even about Section 8, but you'll know that it's some type of government safeguard to make sure that you get your money, and that also that you'll be able to get more money because you're working with people who are underserved. So it has to be your mission as a landlord. Like, what is it? Is it really about just the money with you, or is it really about you know contributing and developing the community your properties are in?
Okay, I do like that perspective, but if I am an investor, I guess my argument to you would be what does it matter to you whether I'm in it for the money or not? I don't really care about developing a community. If I'm in it because it's a business, right? I come into a large sum of money and I just want to buy up a couple of blocks, right? And this is happening. Um, I don't really care about developing a community because I only care about running and operating a business. So what difference does it make? I'm gonna bring Kim to the stage. Kim, I want you to chime in on this. Now, one of the questions here is, should it be higher insurance fees? Now, let me just throw this $2 million perspective. I'm never going to say, let me add my 2 cents because that's too low for me. Here's my $2 million perspective on this. So let's say, for instance, Jonathan, I love this question here. Uh, should should the insurance fees be higher if a landlord does not do or have a, a policy in place to conduct stringent background checks? So let's say, for instance, you have, and Jonathan, I do know some landlords who had a very low level application process, whereas they barely did an application or they barely allowed tenants to do an application. Um, so let's say, for instance, a landlord. Let me just paint the picture here. A landlord allows someone to move in. They have a 2-page application, it's front and back. It does not ask for a lot of information. The lease is not as strong as mine. My lease, true story, my lease package is at least between 35 to 61 pages long. Okay, because I'm going to always make sure that the asset is protected. So I'm going to cover the asset at all costs. That's the property or the owner's property. So, but let's just say that the application is a front and back application. The lease is a few pages long, doesn't really have a whole lot of language. So you have a tenant who moves in. The owner didn't know much about this applicant. Now they're a tenant, right? And so this tenant has a habit of not paying the rent. And in addition to not paying the rent, the tenant also has a documented history through the court system that the owners obviously didn't know about because they didn't conduct the background check. It didn't go that deep. But the tenants have damaged the rental properties that they lived in. So every property that they lived in, there was always extensive damage. There were large, massive body holes in the wall. Windows were broken. Doors were off the hinges, off the frame. And so you have this situation. So the homeowner contacts the insurance company to say, hey, listen, my property is damaged. And if you have someone like this with a history of destroying rental property and they go from one landlord to the next, and it does happen, um, landlords, they report it to the insurance company. So now you have all these insurance companies, they are paying out this money for the damages. And so the question here is, which is why I love Jonathan's question, should insurance fees be higher? Um, what about property reputation issue? Adam, let me have you to chime in on that.
With that perspective, then it's this is I'm gonna say that we know that when you have property in certain areas, you're gonna attract a certain applicant, and in certain areas, it's it's people as you described or a person as you described just now. So that they're gonna move around, and plus they're gonna stay in the area where they already know. My thing is, if it's going to cost me more money, then that means the rent has to go up because I can't make no money if I'm paying these insurance premiums. And if my insurance is too high, then my rent got to be too high because all these things that you're saying make your property tax go up. It makes your rent. It makes it hard for you to pay your mortgage because a lot of people don't know some of these people that do own property, unless it's a big property management company. A lot of them simply, small homeowners, small, landlords, they're barely if they got unless they got multiple units, they're not even making enough money from the rent to pay their mortgage. So it always has to be about what's financially better for me than it is for you.
All right, Kim, you want to take a stab at this before we go on to the next one? I do like that. Thank you, Adam.
No, I just think, piggyback, you got to protect the assets at all costs. So, if that means charging more rent, then, charge more rent.
All right, Queen Robinson says, I feel like there should be a time limit to do a background check. If it's more than a year after the crime, it shouldn't affect potential tenancy. I do like that perspective. Janiqua has a question here. What are the legal risks for landlords who reject applicants based on their criminal history? Well, great question. That all depends on the jurisdictions because in some areas that are, let me use Washington, D.C. If that happens in Washington, D.C., that landlord will likely have a lawsuit filed against them. Fines, penalties, lawsuits, potential jail time.
Mm,
In jurisdictions where the laws are very strict and strong in favor of tenants, a landlord would be better off packing up and relocating versus trying to um, violate the law. Okay. And so it is a big risk. And as a matter of fact, not only that, but some landlords have learned the hard way and had to shut their business down because they violated the laws. And so that's why it's so important to know what the laws are in your specific area if you are a landlord or housing provider. All right, Tiara, yeah, you're right. It is so much bigger than this. Elsie has a comment, background checks and personal references. I definitely agree that this is important, but here's the thing. Let me just speak on personal references. I'm going to take it a little bit deeper. Let me go to landlord references because now this also goes back to, I think it was Jonathan Mickles had a question about the rubrics that, landlords could consider. And then one of the things that some people can do is, and I know that some people do it, they'll use a landlord reference. But let me just say this, and I am guilty of having done this in the past. If I've had it, and I have had tenants who were maybe not the best tenant, maybe they didn't take care of the property, they didn't pay the rent, and it was cheaper for me to stretch the truth for a new landlord who reached out to me, say, hey, Karissa, we have this applicant. One of your tenants wants to live in our property. Can you give us a reference? Can you complete this rental verification form? So for me, it was easier to stretch the truth and say that, yes, this tenant, I would take this tenant back versus the money that it cost me or that it would take to take that tenant to court, pay attorney fees and court costs and additional
okay.
months of not having revenue or income coming in. It was just easier to stretch the truth and pass that person on to the next. And so, although I do believe it is important to do those things, I would not solely rely on those. I would not put those at the top of the list in terms of a criteria, but I do like that. Cassandra says she liked the 24 months. Janiqua agrees that with Jonathan, well, she says that Jonathan, 24 months with no convictions would be good too. All right, another question here from Jonathan. Can we share vendors who have good, robust background check service for both credit and criminality? And I think that, Jonathan, this is definitely happening for landlords who are in associations and organizations where there are landlords. So with me, I am part of NARPM. I'm part of quite a few landlord communities. And in those communities, yes, we do share that information. But now for landlords, especially the smaller landlords who are not in any type of organization or association, whether it's AOBA, National Apartment Association, like there are a lot of organizations that provide value and education for landlords. But for the smaller landlords who are not affiliated with any of these organizations, they're the ones who are left out because they don't even know that this information is available. So that is a great question. Thank you for that, Jonathan. All right, we do have quite a few more comments and questions in the chat box. Thank you all for your feedback and chiming in. Cassandra says she agreed with Janiqua. Cassandra said they will find a workaround, and usually they do, because people who are determined to get what they want will do whatever it takes at all costs to get what they want. Nita says there's nothing more to give. We're just shy of giving DNA samples.
Yeah.
All right, Tierra, laws and change. It boils down to actual laws being recreated and respected, and the opportunity to welcome, accept, respect a person's change, not try to make them relive it or have them punished forever. I definitely agree. All right, Nita says, I think intent would hold a lot of weight. Jonathan, Janiqua said, Jonathan, second chance is for both. Okay. All right, Elsie, do you think landlords should be able to rent depending on the type of charges a person served time for? Great, great question, Elsie. I'm going to ask Kim. Take a look at Elsie's question. She's asking, do you think landlords should be able to rent depending on the types of charges a person served time for?
I do think it should be like, a certain charge that could get you disqualified, or certain charges that can be, overlooked. Maybe the length of the time that the charge happened or the severity of the crime. I think those should be taken into account as well.
Thank you. And so, Adam, I'm coming to you now. Now I have a question off not Elsie's question, but let me ask this question. Do you think that people should be protected?
And the funny thing you said that, Professor Spann, because people are protected. It's in the Fifth and the Eighth Amendment right protects the person who's been convicted of a crime not to be subjected to a never punishment based on his conviction, so which would be under the double jeopardy clause. So if a person is actually being denied housing because he's been convicted of a crime, then he's for there the people, the city, the landlord, whatever organization, they're guilt, they're violating that person's right under the Fifth and Eighth Amendment of the Double Jeopardy Clause, and that's something that's really big that a lot of people won't think about or even try to pursue because once again, in the Black and brown community, we don't really do a lot of research and we're not going to take it all the way to the fullest extent.
Love it, love it, love it. Let's see here. And this speaks to the question that I just asked. Um, I think that landlords shouldn't discriminate, but protect themselves and their properties by any means, but also be realistic about the risk of being a landlord, no matter who you rent to. And I think that is so important Thank you so much for that comment. Janiqua Elsie, she says, I was thinking that too. Kayla says, I don't necessarily agree with the argument about how our grandparents did more with less due to the fact that there was more community and families taught their children more if there's no one to teach. Now, this is loaded. This is loaded. I can appreciate that. Yes, back then, um, there were more values being taught, right? And yes, I can agree with that. My father, um, my father actually worked in the field with his father, and so slavery was in my family. My father was able to share those experiences. My father passed away a few years ago, and he was 94. My father only had second grade education because he had to work in the field with his father to help take care of the field, till the field, as well as look after his siblings. And so I do know the impact that slavery does have on family. And then also, let me take this back to the comment that you made, um, Adam, about parents should not suggest or tell their children to go to school or to go to college if they don't have a degree. Well, if you take a step back, all of our ancestors didn't have college degrees. They all didn't have uh, formal education. As I just shared, my father had second grade education, but he was a great businessman as pertains to taking care of business and finances, although he did not have traditional schooling. My father never made it out of elementary school, right? And so, but I do know that they instilled strong work ethic and value. And I think that a lot of that is missing, going to Kayla's point here. But what's your take on this, Kim?
I do feel like this generation is lacking like the traditional values and family and community that used to be. Like I was raised in the 80s and I even grew up with that same type of like community and family, and everybody was sticking together and we had religion in our lives. And now today is I think the communities are lacking that. I really do. The fathers aren't like they used to be, the mothers, even the grandmothers. Like we used to have grandmothers that, the traditional grandma. Now grandmas aren't the same. So, I do feel I feel her comment. I feel it.
All right, all right.
Mhm.
I see Adam's wheels. His wheels are turning.
Mhm.
No, I mean,
Adam, keep it to 30 seconds because we're running low on time here.
I just, it's when it comes to stuff like that, it's everybody. I gotta value everybody's perspective. I can't. I mean, it's not mine, so I can't say it doesn't have no value. It's just how she feel. I can't say nothing else about that.
Okay. Here's a question Janique was asking. Would you all say that New York is too overpopulated to keep up with this type of documentation? That is a good point. But now here's the thing, because if a landlord is treating their business like a business,
Oh, good.
there should be some sort of system in place. So if 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 a landlord is in business, you have an owner who's in business and they're not treating it like a business. They don't have policies. They don't have uh, SOPs in place. They don't have anything in place, and they shouldn't be in business. But I do believe that number one, if a business owner is operating in accordance to their policy, their SOPs, they should be good. But now also keep in mind that each state, each jurisdiction has some sort of authority in place to govern or should govern how a landlord can do business. And when laws are passed, usually there is some sort of, um, in addition to the policies, there is some sort of something put in place to make sure that landlords are held accountable, whether it's an inspection office, a housing authority, or whatever, right? You have the Office of Attorney General who will step up, so um, there are things in place to make sure that landlords are doing what they're supposed to do. And I think that, because when laws are changed, it creates an opportunity beyond this conversation. It creates other opportunities. And so maybe jobs are going to now come into play because there has to be people governing or maintaining control or tracking or whatever of these new positions that are in place. So I do think that we should explore this a little bit more, go a little deeper in these conversations, because these are all really great questions and topics. But let's continue going here. Continued financial literacy on how to build credit, or all you know is illegal activity. When you're young, you're bound to make mistakes. Absolutely. I think that educating our youth is important. I believe in educating families. That's one of the things that I'm big on. As you all know, I'm a housing educator. But when I go into a tenant's home, and if I see something, I always say something. I always like to educate, because here's what I do know. People do things for two reasons, either because they don't know or because they don't care. And in many cases, sometimes nobody ever told them, right? We just heard that grandparents are different today. I am a grandmother. I am not like my grandmother was with me, right? I'm a grandmother who work. I'm a grandmother who ride a motorcycle. I'm not my grandmother, right? And so times have changed, right? I'm out here working. I do spend time with my family. I did grow up in a church, and I take my grandkids to church with me. My kids, they grew up in the church, but we're living in a different time now. Also, back in those days, maybe Big Mom and them stayed home because that's what they had to do. They had to stay home and provide for the family. They had to provide for the kids. They had to sew. They had to cook. They had to clean, right? While Papa Charlie or whoever was out in the field or out working or whatever, right? Or maybe there was no male factor in the home. But nowadays, sometimes that's just not the dynamics of a family, and the structure is not the same. But I do appreciate those strong values, and I do believe that we should definitely educate. We should definitely talk to our kids. We should definitely talk to our nieces and nephews. And if we don't have those family members like that in the makeup of our family, then maybe share that
That's
information
all.
with others. Absolutely. Because it does take a village. Now, I come from a big family. Now, I'm the baby. I had seven sisters. I had seven sisters and a brother. And the next sibling to me in age was at least 15 years older than I am. So I grew up with older people around me. And it took a village to raise me, right? And that's what it takes. And I think that we lost that in community, everybody. And we heard today that sometimes people should just mind their business. And when we take that approach, we're removing that village feel. Like, okay, well, I don't care what they're doing. I'm a stay out of their business and let them stay out of mine, right? And I do believe that it does take a village, and we do need to get back to instilling those strong values, because if not, things are only going to get worse. If nobody's telling these young sisters, if these young brothers don't have an older male figure or someone to speak to them and tell them, yo, listen, this is not how you should live. This is not how you talk. You should do something with yourself, right? If these conversations are not taking place, then we're always going to have something. We're always going to be behind the eight ball. We're always going to be on the back of the problem versus getting ahead of it. And so I do appreciate that. Thank you, Kayla. Kelly says she thinks 7 years is too long, but she definitely does agree with Jonathan. I'm going to run really quickly here through these comments. There are a lot of comments here. Tiara says, I can agree with that, Mr. Mickles. It's a on the clock mindset that's needed. Everyone should learn the laws. Absolutely. Is bigger than the topic at hand. Absolutely. Everybody, any landlord should know the law, but I do believe that tenants should also know their rights as well. Cassandra has a comment here. If we didn't publicize our personal business, everyone would not know. Why do we put our business out there for others to know? Oh, that is so good, because as we know, so much stuff goes on social media. Where people ate. Now, I'm guilty. Sometimes I get some good food. Listen, I'm a foodie. Don't judge me. I'm a foodie. I might post my food on social media, but what I will not do is post my personal business on social media, right? That's not for the public. What I do in my personal tent, inside my home, that's my business. That's not for the world to see. And I do believe that people should definitely use discretion on some of the things that they post. What you think, Kim?
I think that's true. I think we tend to overshare and just we just overdo a lot of things, and social media is one of them. I mean, I don't need to know that you woke up this morning and had coffee, then you went to the gym, and then like I don't need to know every step of your life on an everyday basis. Like I don't.
Adam?
Um, I really don't have no comment on that because I know that some people they'll comment on these so-called celebrities' lives, but won't comment on the things that have any value or importance in their community. So it's it's just wild. It's just you should know that. I mean that everything is not for everybody. That you shouldn't share everything. And sometimes if you happy, but I look at it like if you happy and you've been down because sometimes you need to be celebrated and sometimes you should celebrate. Sometimes everybody not gonna clap for you, and that you should clap for yourself and celebrate yourself. So I don't. So it but social media is a tool. It's how you use it. That's the only thing I can say.
I like that. I definitely agree with that.
That's true. That's true.
And I think that more people need to understand that because everybody don't know, right? We already know that times have changed and a lot of the youth, even some adults, you would think that it's common sense, but here's what I do know. Common sense is not so common.
Oh man, don't get me started.
Okay, let me go back to a question here. How about people with personality disorders, mental health issues? Now, that's a whole segment in and of itself. May is Mental Health Month. Now, when it comes to mental health, that's a beast in and of itself because there are things that definitely landlords cannot do, but yet landlords will discriminate against people with a disability, with people who have mental health disorders or illnesses or sicknesses. It is a problem, and I do understand the seriousness of it. So let's say, for instance, um, you have a tenant who is renting a property. They have a mental health disability. They like to set fires in the apartment because they were once homeless. They lived out in the woods. And in the wintertime, that's what they did. They started a fire to keep warm. And so they set fires in the living room. Instead of turning the heat on, they set a fire in the living room. And it's that mindset, right? How, as a landlord, does an owner or a landlord handle that situation? Because it puts not only that tenant in danger, but it put other tenants in danger as well. Now, I do know that some landlords will discriminate against individuals like this. Is it right? Absolutely not. Is it against the law? Absolutely, because fair housing laws say, and fair housing laws is across the United States. The Fair Housing Act, that is a federal mandate that landlords cannot discriminate based off of disability. Now, landlords may know it, but will still know that if this tenant has a history of starting fires, would you want that tenant in your home? How would you handle that situation? Would you want that tenant to rent your mama's or your grandmother's rental property? And so yeah, it's definitely deeper than this, than these conversations we're having. Jonathan has a question. What are some resources that one can use to improve credit without paying for a service or one that has a fee? Jonathan, I don't have a list of resources, but I do thank you for that question. Adam, do you have anything that you can share? Do you know of any resources that someone can use to improve their credit?
Um, Only thing I could really think of is like you would have to, if I was a person that didn't know what I've learned this stuff about myself personally, trial and error, is I would go to, you have places like the Greater Washington Urban League. They have a great financial center where they can help you with the housing as well as that. I would say reach out. There are a lot of community development organizations in your community on different parts in every ward. Like don't be shy. Walk in there and ask the questions that you need to ask. And you can't feel no question is a dumb question until you ask it. And if you don't know about something, you have to be humble and just take it in stride and learn. And then once you learn the basics of something, you'll be able to, navigate and navigate and learn more. But the first thing I would do, I would always go to a community organization, and they're known for helping people with bad credit or just known for teaching credit, financial literacy. That's where you want to go.
Okay, I do like that. Thank you. So, although Jonathan, that wasn't something that I was prepared for, but that's a good point. So you have the Greater Washington Urban League. Let's think. You have United Planet Organization. There are definitely nonprofit entities throughout most cities and jurisdictions that could definitely assist individuals who are struggling uh, with credit and need help with credit repair. There are credit repair businesses. There are credit repair specialists that people could also use to help them improve their credit. I just don't have a list of those resources available to give that information, and so I do apologize. I don't have that information readily available, Jonathan. But thank you for that question. Okay, so we're wrapping up here. Elsie said, I think a background check should go back more than 7 years. Let's see here. Could you share some best practices for evaluating rental applications that include criminal history while remaining compliant with fair housing laws? Absolutely. So if it's a jurisdiction where, like Washington, D.C., you cannot solely deny an applicant based off of their criminal, you can still do credit, but you just can't solely deny. And it just depends on the jurisdiction, because again, all the laws are not the same for every area. Okay, so in some places it is acceptable, in others it is prohibited. You can, like I mentioned a little earlier, you can look at their income. Do they have the capacity to pay? You can look at their income. You can look at employment. Do they make 2.5 times, 3 times the rent amount? So, for instance, can they afford the rent? If the rent is $3,000, or if the rent is $1,000, their monthly income should be 3,000. So, there are definitely other practices that landlords can use. It just depends on what the laws are in that area. I would definitely say whatever the practice is, it should be in writing. Their policy should be clear, and the applicant should know upfront what the requirements are. Do not do anything illegal. Don't try to, and I know that sometimes people will discriminate if they find out that someone is participating in a housing program, right? It happens all the time. But again, income is a protected class, and a lot of areas are now starting to adopt that same law. Um, so that's my response to Janiqua. Let me wrap up. We have a couple more questions here now. Jonathan question, would it be a good idea to partner with an area nonprofit who specializes in ex-offender reentry to get good prospects while providing a second chance?
Yeah, and you get a tax break for that. Yeah, and you get a tax break for that. Why wouldn't you, Jonathan? Because you get a tax break for providing that, for providing housing for ex offenders. So it could be an incentive, and then for some of them, they can be there's a word for it. I can't think of it right now, but it's like they'll be insured, like they'll be insured for any damages that might happen to your property. So, that's something where though you might can make more money with that than doing regular people because you're dealing with regular people. It's regular people out here that's coming into your property and squatting. As you seen the migrant person, he did a video on TikTok telling them in Spanish, this what you do. Come over here, come take over a house. They can't do nothing to you. So they came and got him though, but you know what I'm saying? So it's with right now it's like it's a 50-50 chance because people sometimes people may have we can have the finances up front for first 2 years and then something might happen in the third year, like and then with the economy being what it is, with food costs, with food is inflation and food costs, you got to work more, and then sometimes people don't have the education to be able to get a job that pays them more, so they should actually use the resources in this area, especially like if you come into the workforce institute at UDC and you be able to get college courses for free because you're a DC resident, you got to take advantage of them opportunities or any other program that we have in DC.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, I'm going to Kayla's comment here. She has a comment. The Eighth Amendment apply to trial and courtroom, meaning they can't bring you in court for the same crime twice. And the Fifth Amendment basically says you're a slave again. It doesn't really apply here. Okay, so she's going back to a previous
Uh,
comment.
uh, no, when you've been convicted of a crime and you be in a situation where it's because you're being punished for that crime, that is still double jeopardy. The double jeopardy clause. I don't know what you're reading in the Fifth Amendment because the 13th Amendment deals with. I don't know the Fifth Amendment and the Eighth Amendment is called. It's all you have to do is look up the double jeopardy clause in the United States Constitution. It's under the Fifth Amendment and the Eighth Amendment. They
All
deal with not really things in the courtroom. It's dealing with your right to not to be punished for a crime. So if I do, for example, take Meek Mill, a lot of people they didn't get too deep into what happened with Meek Mill, but what happened with Meek Mill was a form of double jeopardy because he served his time. He was on probation, and every time he gave a probation violation, he could serve him more time, but his probation was being extended. That's a form of double jeopardy. Even though he's on probation, probation is part of his sentence. But that's still a form of double jeopardy because he's serving time. His time should have been shortened, not lengthened.
all
So it's
right.
the same thing if you serve your time and then your rights is being violated because of your criminal history. It's still discrimination and it's still a violation of your rights.
All right, let's go to our next question here. Tiara says, it takes a healthy village. Minding your unhealthy business is certainly needed. All right, we are wrapping up here. We have a lot of comments and questions, and I do regret that we don't have time to go through all of them. But John Neese did say that uh, Chime Credit Builder card has been good to me. And I also use Credit Comma. So that goes back to Jonathan's question about what can be used. I'm not really familiar with this one here. Kelly
Yeah,
has,
that's the capital. Yeah, that's the capital access builder. If they have a program where though you whatever you save, they match it 4 times. So if you put up 1,500, they give you 6,000, and you're allowed to withdraw the total 7,500 to use for the start of business order for down payment for a house. That's
okay.
called a capital area builder. Yeah.
Okay.
Capital access area builder.
Yep.
Capital area access builder. I'm sorry.
Capital area asset builders. Yes, that's what Kelly shared. Okay. And Tiara said Lexington Law Firm is good for credit. And let's see here. Kelly made a comment to improve your personal credit. You can get a secure card for yourself. For
Themselves.
yourself. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm going to wrap up with that. This was a really good conversation, guys. Listen, ladies and gentlemen, I don't know if you uh, took notes or if you really paid attention to the conversation and heard the perspectives, either from myself, the panel, or those who chimed in the comment section. This is an important matter, and I think that we should continue to have conversations in the community because before a law is passed, there's a conversation that's introduced. And so when it's introduced, that is definitely the time to pay attention. Contact your council members, go to those meetings, go to those hearings, weigh in on the conversations. It's not just enough for us to have these conversations on social media and we're not really doing anything to rally behind it or to take a stand either for or against it. We do have to show up in strong numbers. I do believe that we should get back to community. But my time is up. Our time is up, and we thank you for yours. Adam, thank you so much for joining me today. Kim, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for
Thank
having me.
you.
You have been absolutely amazing. I will definitely bring you back on now. Many people know that I'm usually online on Mondays, but today I thought it would be fitting to have this conversation. And so if you have not already subscribed to my YouTube channel, please do so. You can find me there on YouTube, Landlord Life with Karissa Spann. I am live each and every Monday. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel. That way you'll know when I'm live and online. I might just have a pop-up session like today. I was in class and my students and we were talking about this very conversation. This was a suggestion that was made, and I wanted to make sure that we come and address it because this is a situation that is this is a live situation that's really happening in New York. So these are laws that are being proposed. In some areas, they're already in play, right? Um, I believe that an educated rental community is always better. So I find tremendous and immense value in sharing information for landlords as well as tenants. Adam, I'm going to ask if you have any final remark or word that you want to share, as well as Kim.
Um, no, I mean it's like I think from the comments, from the questions and stuff, it's an issue where though as a community we have to have to really take accountability for ourselves. I'm not saying that you have to try to save everyone, but save your try to improve yourself and your family members, your immediate household, and then from there, if you want to get involved with the community, do so, and make sure that it's because you can take a it's a saying you can take a horse to lead a horse to the water, but you can't make him drink it. But nowadays, you have to make sure that you lead the horse to the right water because every water ain't good water. And I'm gonna leave it at that.
Thank you so much, Kim.
Yes, I had a great time engaging in this conversation with you guys, and I appreciate you for having me. Thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you heard it. My time is up. I thank you for yours. Thank you so much, Kim. Thank you so much, Adam. I look forward to seeing you in class. To all of my students who are tuned in, I look forward to seeing you in class. And if this is your first time tuning in, thank you. Welcome. Thank you for those of you who are watching on Facebook. I'm live on YouTube as well as LinkedIn. I am Karissa Spann, the abundantly blessed landlord and tenant expert. I enjoy bringing information that positively impact the rental community. Please, again, make sure that you subscribe to my YouTube channel. I do hope that this was of value. If this was helpful for you, please let me know. What are your thoughts? Put it in the comment section. Let me know if this was helpful. I definitely want to bring engaging discussions and conversations that will bring about a change, thought-provoking conversations. And again, subscribe to that YouTube channel. If you have comments, remarks, or observations, please Facebook, YouTube, or LinkedIn, put it in the comment section and I will reply. My time is up. I thank you for yours. I look forward to hopefully seeing you all next Monday right here at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'm going to say bye for now.